Now that we've got the database set, what I'm going to do is create the API endpoints, which are going to be PHP files, to populate each one of these tables: person, location, lived at, and event. I'm going to do the person and location ones first because they're the outer tables, and then lived at, and finally event. I'm going to make some assumptions. I'm going to make the assumption that either you have seen my previous videos, in which case the programming style is going to be the same. I will refactor, change the programming a bit later on, turning things into functions to make it a bit more efficient. If you haven't gone through any of my previous videos, this is just going to be a straightforward walkthrough and talk of how to do the programming. So if there is anything you don't understand, you probably have to stop the video and find out. So let's start up Notepad. What I'm going to do is create a new file, and what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to create for each of the tables. I've got person, location, and event, and lived at. I'm going to create an add person .php file, add location, add event, and add lived at. So we are inserting data into the database, and because we're inserting data into the database, I'm going to choose the safe method of posting rather than using a get to put our information in. So this is my first file, add person. It is a PHP file. So we do the PHP tags. The first thing I'm going to do is check whether anybody who's sent the information from, whether it be an Android device or from a web page, that they've actually included the three fields that I require them to send. So I'm going to check to see if they have been placed on the or in the body of the post. So straightforward if else, not included in body. Oops. Included. So let's go through the actual function. And I'm going to use a lot of copying and pasting here to make life a little bit easier. I'm going to find out if the values have been set. If is set, and remember we're posting, whoops. I'm probably going to make a lot of mistakes, and at the end of the day it's not going to run. I'll have to stop the video, figure out what's wrong, and then come back to it. But hopefully, fingers crossed, that I'll get it done first time. Which will be remarkable. So we've got a first name field that we're going to pass in. I'm going to use the names that we've used from the database. I'm going to overload them, in other words, use them a lot. And again, I'm going to do a lot of copying and pasting just to cut down on typing. So if is set, and is set last name, and is set birth year, I think we called it. Really went well. Birth year. Now, what's going to happen here is we must set the first name, we must set the last name. But I'm not really bothered about birth year, although it's got to be a field that's sent. I'm not bothered what it contains. So I'm going to deal now with the case of first name and last name having a value, and I'll show you how to handle whether birth year contains a value or not for the database. So now another if statement in here. Values are included. because we could have the state where we've set it but we haven't given a value. Else values not included. Now that was done with a check on whether the value was empty or not. So if it's not empty, and let's copy that. We haven't got an empty first name, and let's just paste that and edit. We haven't got an empty last name, then we're okay. Like I said, the birth year doesn't matter. What I'm going to do before I sort of put the code into here is I'm going to work on the else parts. What happens if they're not included? Because I'm going to report back to the user in JSON that we didn't do the work. So first of all, if the values are not set, if they're not included in the body, now I need to check which ones they are, so I can report back to the user, oh, you didn't send the first name, or you didn't send the last name, or you didn't set the birth year. So I'm going to make that attempt. So in here, if let's set the response variable to fail first of all. Might look a bit weird, but we're going to say the success. Oops, getting ahead of myself here. If the success is 0, that means it's failed. If it's 1, then it's good. Okay, passed. So I need to give a message back to the user, sort of why it failed. The message I'm going to say here that there was a coding error. Now, it's a coding error because really we are the only people who are going to be sending data to the database. We're responsible for it. So obviously if one of these fields has not been set, then that's our fault. We made a coding mistake in either our Android or in our Python or whatever we used to call it. So a parameter has not been set. So give us some information as to why we had a problem. What we need to do then is just send it back to the user, which is ourselves. So we are going to echo JSON encode. We're going to make the array, and the array we're going to use is the response array that we've just set up. And that's the job. We've now handled the case where either or any one of these has not been sent. We made a coding error, we've made an error, and we're reporting back. And now we're going to go to the isEmpty. And this is a little bit different because we might want to know which one was not empty. This is sort of down to the person who's filling in the fields. So a message will be given back to say, oh, you haven't put a first name in, or you haven't put a last name in, can you please include it? Okay, so this is not go back to your code and recode something. This is go back to the form and fill something in. So the easiest way to deal with this is if we did this here now, and I'm going to use the same coding. Whoops. It's a lot easier if you don't cut it out. Use the same coding. But it's not if empty, it is if they are empty. Oh, that's not going to work, is it? see an error that I've made already. There we go, I think that's much better. I'm wondering if we've got the right amount of marks. There we go. So we're going to find out if these are empty or not empty. So we need to do the same up here. That's better. Let's check that one. Right, okay. Apologies for that. I'm going to get a lot of coding problems. Hopefully I'll see them. It's difficult to talk and walk at the same time. So now I'm checking if they're empty. But instead of having an and, I'm going to make it an or. So if that is empty, or if that is empty, then I'm going to do whatever's inside here. One was empty. And I don't think I need an else with that. We'll come back to that one in a minute. But if either one of these are empty, what I need to do is, again, use this method of sending a response back to the user. Time there wasn't a coding error. We can tell them that either the first name or last name field was not completed. We're not bothered with the birth year at the present time. So we've handled both failures at the moment. We're okay with that. Just checking through. I could work out which one it was and respond back to that, but I think we're fine with the way we are. Okay, so we're only interested now in what happens if we have got a first name and we've got a last name. If we're in that position, then we need to set up our database. So I'm going to set the server equal to localhost. So ready for my connection. I'm going to set the username equal to wherever I set the username to, which was me. That's for my own name. The password again was my name. All lowercase. And the database that we are trying to talk to was called Family Tracker. Okay, so I've set up my variables to talk to the database, which I'm going to be doing in a short while. But before I talk to the database, I've got to grab all of the variables, first name, last name, and birth year, so I can create a query and send that query along to the database. So let's make a start on that one. Let's get the first name. So we are only here if they've been set and if we have a first name. Notice I've just put not empty in there. If first name is not empty and last name, if both of those are not empty, so they both contain a value. Now that's important. As I said, I'm not bothered about the birth year, but I must have these two values. Reason being that I just need to know who the person is so I can display the information on the screen. I'm not really bothered about the birth year. However, if I've got two people with the same first and last name in the family, which is most likely, as children tend to be named after their grandparents or their parents, then the birth year is going to help out. But I might not always know the birth year, but I should always know the first and last names. So I'm going to grab those from the post. So first name is, oops, I copy that. And the variable last name is equal to, copy that. So I've got the first and last names. What I want to do now is grab the birth year. Now, as I said, it doesn't really matter, but if I haven't got a birth year, I really want to have a null value being sent to the database. I just don't want to leave it out. I'm going to create a query which is going to send first name, last name and birth year to the database. But if I don't have a birth year, I've got to make sure that it's empty, that it doesn't contain anything. Otherwise the database is going to complain and send back an error. So let's manage the birth year. So if now we need to check if it's empty or not empty. Let's see which one we get. Let's take this. Paste it in here. Change that for birth year. Just trying to work out which is the best way to do it, if it's not empty or if it is empty. It doesn't really matter. If it is empty, what I can do is have a variable birth year and set that value to null. Else I can set birth year equal to the value that was sent in. So now if it's empty, I'm giving the value null, so nothing is going to be sent. When I say nothing's going to be sent, a null is going to be sent. I couldn't use a string, I couldn't use an empty string because this is actually a number. So remember we set it up as an integer, so I'm sending null. However, if it does contain a value, we're going to pick up the value and save it in birth year. So now I've got the first name, last name and birth year set. What I really need to do is think about the query. The query is probably the hardest part to write, so if I go through it sort of slowly, I'll probably make a mistake myself. The query, so it's going to look like that. We're going to have an insert query because it's going to insert items into the database. Insert into the table is called person, and we need some values. Inside here I need to put all the fields that I am dealing with, so person ID, first name, not happy with that birth year, I need to check it out, first name, last name, and I'm going to put birth year, but it needs to match the database, so let's go and check out what I actually did in person. Yeah, I called it birth year, so that's fine. Now, this is the awkward part, the values. The first one is straightforward, it's null because we're not going to set the person ID, the computer is auto-incrementing, so we didn't need to give that a value. The rest of it is going to be a little difficult. they're going to be sent as strings, and I'm going to separate those with single quotes. So there are the three things that I'm going to be sending: that, that, and that. Now we need to break this string so we can include the variables, we can build them into the string. It's a feature of some languages, but PHP, if we use the dot notation, we can concatenate the strings together. So each one of these is going to contain first name, last name, and birth year variables. So I'm going to break inside each one of the string. I know it doesn't look very pleasant, but it's fine. And each one, the concatenation operator is the dot. And inside here, I just need the variable names to match these. So this one would be the first name variable. This one would be the last name variable. And this one would be the birth year variable. Now that is one way of actually putting together the string and hoping that you've made no mistakes. It's not guaranteed. Chances are to make a mistake, but it's good practice. So try to build it like that. Make sure you include the semicolon on the end. So now I've got all my variables and I've got my query. All I really need to do is connect to the database and send that query. So I need a connection variable. Which is going to hold the information for the database. And the way I'm going to do this, I think just follow along without any explanation. MySQL, and we are going to connect, and inside the connection string we are going to include the server, the username, the password, and the database. Just checking that I've got those in the correct order. So there's my connection string. If we remember, and I'm going to open one up, let's just save that for the time being. We're going to make a query, we're going to send the query to the database and get a return. So I'm going to open up a previous file. Let's see. Let's try this post person here. So what we need to do once we've done that, we need to send the query to the database. So I'm looking for this line. Okay. So my result is going to be send to the query, the connection, and the query. So if I copy that, I can put that in my my file. What I need to do is check that this connection is worked, and if it has, then I can continue to my program here. If not, it's just going to kill the script. So the way to do that is if I don't have a connection, if not connection, so that's going to come back true or false. False is if there's no database, or it can't connect with one of these items, wrong password, wrong username. If not connection, then what I really need to do is report back to the user, response, getting very sloppy, response, success, equals 0. And a message back to the user as well. So we need a response. Message equals we got that right? Yeah. Connection to database failed. Okay, so I'm cooking on gas. So I only get to this part of the program if I have a connection. I need to sort of finish off this last little bit with this command. I don't want to continue the script, I just want to kill the script. So I'm going to die, and I'm going to send back a message which is going to be my response. JSON encode, build the array, if it's spelled encode correctly, JSON encode, and I'm going to send back my response variable. So it is going to kill the script and send back the connection to the database has failed if we can't connect. And that die means that nothing from that point onwards is going to be executed. So this result will only work if we have a connection. If we have a connection, we are going to set up a query, MySQLi query, with the connection string that we set up here, and a query which we set up there. If it works, if it inserts into the database all of these values, then we're okay and the result will be good. If it doesn't, the result will be terrible. So we're going to take a look at handling the result and sending back messages to users. So if the result, so if it's sort of true, okay, if it's true, we are going to do this. The response success equals 1, indicating that we've got success. We're going to have a message back, response message equals we could just confirm that the data was added to the database. The data was added to the database. Now we've got the situation where it failed. So this could be because we either sent some wrong values or something happened so that the database rejected the actual data, and we're going to say just that. We're going to say that the response success equals fail, response message equals the data was rejected. And for both of those we need to echo out what the response was. So I could do it in here for each one of those, or I could do it afterwards, knowing that we'll get to this point in the program no matter whether it was successful or whether it was unsuccessful. And I can just echo out the JSON encode response. So whatever the message was here, it's going to echo it out here. So either we're going to be successful or we're not going to be successful. Okay, so I think that is my program. I'm going to save it. I'm going to test it before coming back and fixing whatever errors there are.